Today we're going to draw the Imperial City from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. We're going to work on getting the perspective down right, adding some details and talking about shading, but more so also going to talk about how we can draw a simple, silly, quick sketch of a place we love and how it can be a great exercise in drawing without having to force us to be perfect or spend a whole bunch of time getting the scene exactly right. This is a quick little sketch and it'll take you about 20 minutes. I'm so excited to draw with you. Let's get started. We're going to start with drawing the city walls themselves because that's kind of the main focal point or the largest shape that's visible in the Imperial City. I find when I'm drawing a circular shape in perspective like this, it can be really helpful to draw the shape multiple times in a row, circling around the kind of thin circle shape until I kind of feel like it looks correct or it's kind of matching my reference photo. It's a circular city, but we're viewing it from the side, which means that this city appears to be flattened, like a long oblong oval. Because we're above it, we can see somewhat into the city itself, but not that much into it because we're not that high above the city walls. If we were high above the city, it would appear more like a circle because more of the city itself would be visible. We can see that there's another kind of inner sanctum here that's a smaller circle and a little bit higher as well. And we can draw some walls down from there. And then as well, some walls down from the outside of the city here too. Now, the Imperial City in the game is on a lovely island. And so now we can kind of sketch in the kind of outside of that island here. And you notice the island is a little bit circular as well. It's kind of generally mirroring that circular shape of the city itself. But when we get over to the left side, it kind of trails away a little bit more. I'm then going to start adding in the base of the wall. It's much easier to draw the base than it is the top because the base of the wall doesn't follow a neat circle. Instead, it's kind of up and down landscape that kind of traces the outside of the wall. Because we're so far away here, we're not going to really see much of the details or the stonework or anything like that. And again, we're not trying to capture the photo or the in-game screenshots directly here or entirely. All we're doing is kind of capturing the general kind of layout and vibe of that bottom of the wall. We can see how there's some other shapes here that are really important to capture too when we're sketching in the rough outline. There's another kind of smaller circle off behind. I'm using the same method here as I did with the large one. And another one on this side here. There's some bridges and whatnot, but we can add those a little bit later on. Now let's add the main character here. That's this large spire. And so to do that, we're going to kind of break it down into more simple shapes. First, let's start with a half moon, kind of coming up from the middle of that taller part in the middle here. We're going to add two little lines on top of it and another half arc here. And then let's add a little reference line. So we know that the top of the spire is roughly, 3 times as tall as the walls. With that in mind, we're drawing this little guideline up here. And then we can kind of thicken it because this tower is a little bit thick. It goes down. And there's a little bulge here. We'll add that there. And then a slightly thicker part that goes down to our base here. Now the top we'll add in more details later. We can leave it like that for now. Now we know that this city is also divided by walls. There's multiple kind of spokes of a central wheel kind of going out to these large and very cool towers. So we're going to draw those now. If we think about this as the middle of the circle right here, that means that these towers will all come out on lines kind of going back into that middle of the circle. Now we have, 4 of these that are visible. And now what we want to do is add some height to the spires on the other sides. And so again, let's add some guidelines first. We want to keep these about the same height. And then we can thicken them out here. And again, let's save some of the details for the end. We're just going to kind of focus on the brass tacks or the general kind of layout here. I'm going to add some vertical lines coming down from the walls that are visible. And as well, I want to thicken up these walls a little bit too. So I'm adding another line to the side and some vertical lines down here as well. In the middle of these 2 circles, there's going to be some towers that are about as tall as the towers are around our city here. Let's add the details to them later. This tower has a little bit of a point on it, so we're going to add that now, but we'll add the details a little bit later on. Now what we want to do is kind of zoom in, both literally with the photo that we're drawing, but also metaphorically with how we're drawing the details here and what details we choose to draw. We know that if we're starting on the outside of the tower, there's some vertical lines that sort of divide parts of the stonework. To add these in, we need to kind of keep some perspective rules in mind, and that's that these lines and these horizontal kind of tall rectangular pieces of stone will appear close together as they go to the left and the right of our circle. That's because we're viewing them on more of an angle. So when we view them from the side, they appear closer together as they recede away from us. That means that this rectangular part of stone right here will appear to be the widest part of stone, whereas the ones here on the side will appear very thin because we're viewing them on an angle. However, it can be kind of hard to space these out regularly. So what I'd suggest is you kind of divide the space in half. So I'm dividing this space in half, this space in half. I'm doing it again here and here, here and here, here and here. You see what I'm doing here? Adding some spacing to kind of give us the framework for adding those vertical sections of stone. Now there's some finer details here that we will not be able to kind of cover here, especially in a quick little sketch. We can kind of go in now and add in some of the other kind of really distinctive parts of this tower, or this city, I should say. We know that this interior ring here is formed with these really cool kind of crenellations that are arced up and down. A pattern just like that. Remember, as it recedes around the side of the castle though, this pattern is going to appear closer together. And narrower as it recedes around the side. Each of these arcs also corresponds to a narrow kind of vertical downward section here. These are going to become less distinct as they go around the side of our castle. Now we want to add some crenellations, those kind of parapet shapes here on the top of our walls. And again, you'll notice I'm not drawing that slowly here. I'm aiming to get the general idea of this castle down right, or this city, but I'm not really worried about the small details. That can be a great next step for your drawing, or if you want to try to draw it again. But for now, we're working on the kind of the general idea of this design rather than getting all the individual details right. Now, from this far away, we can't see much of these towers, but we know that they have some flat, kind of extended roofs on them here. And we know this top one has a little bit of a ledge at the top, and then some spiky bits right here at the top as well. We already have this middle line, but we can now add some of those side lines here to the tower. Now these other kind of rings far away from us, I'm just going to kind of sketch in. Now let's see how this looks when we add a little bit of shading. You can use a hatching method to shade in some of the walls here. Adding a little bit of shading to the middle wall too. Pretending the sun might be coming from the left-hand side of our page. And with that in mind, we can also add some shading to the right-hand side of the city walls themselves. Let's also add some shading to the right-hand side of these objects here. Now we have the basics of our Imperial City, but what we don't have is any kind of surrounding objects that are visible in the wonderful world of Oblivion. What's visible to me in the photo that we're using is first this little kind of ruined bridge section that has some lovely arches. Now these are going to start out as rectangles, kind of going down here. There's 3 of them. And they have a lovely big old arch. Now let's try to add some shading to kind of flesh out these designs here. So we know that the sun is coming from the left-hand side, so that means that these sides are going to be in shadow. You can add a little bit of a line here, showing that the left-hand side of these bridge parts are in the sun. I want to make sure it's very clear that they are going over water here. Remember, this first part of the bridge is on land, so I'm going to add some land around it. Why don't we add some shading here to the side of the island? You'll see here how rough and how loose I'm being with this drawing. And I think that's something that's really overlooked in a lot of art, how important it can be to draw rough and loose. We don't have to make every drawing a masterpiece or meticulously planned or detailed or crafted. We can work on the overall feel of the drawing that we're drawing without kind of having to worry about the individual details. Sometimes capturing the overall kind of scene is more important than spending so much time on the little small details. That can also translate into how we draw the trees and other environmental features that are kind of visible around the lovely Imperial City. If you've seen my other videos, you know how much I love spending a lot of time on drawings, spending a lot of time kind of refining the details and making sure that each line is correct, often with pen drawing as well. So this style of sketching is not super, doesn't come super natural to me, but it's really a useful way to kind of build up some skill. And this is the part of the drawing where we can go back over the lines we've drawn here with this Imperial City, find out where we can add more detail or shading or what lines we need to highlight to really make it pop. I think it can be really fun to add some darker lines here to the left-hand side of some of these shapes down the walls. It's a really important part of how we perceive the city itself. So making sure that those are dark, visible, and kind of striking can be really important in kind of getting that overall vibe down correctly. And the same goes for the base of this central tower here. These lines are really important to how we perceive the tower, so we want to make sure that they're pretty visible, pretty strong. And the trees, I think, are important here as well. So I think working on them, making sure that the trees and the vegetation kind of matches how we perceive the concept art and the game itself can be really important here for kind of creating the overall atmosphere that the game and the city kind of provides. I think a lot of people can get stuck on capturing every single detail of images, especially when they're working off a concept like this, created by the fine folks at Bethesda. But I think it can also be fun to kind of give your own spin on some of the smaller details. I'm not worrying too much about capturing the individual intricacies of the trees on the island or the trees around the bridge. Instead, I'm just kind of working on adding in vegetation as I kind of remember it from the game and what kind of makes sense, what would be around this Imperial City. You can also keep in mind how the top of this wall here is kind of slanted upwards, so that means that it'll be a little bit, a tad lighter than the wall below it, especially as we kind of move into shadow on the right hand side of our drawing here. Some dark shadows can be a really great way as well of adding some even more contrast to this scene. There are some little rooftops visible here too, some really small ones. And hey, even if you don't see them in the game from this angle, we can always have fun with adding our own little embellishments. That's a really important and I think critical part of creating art that you love, that you enjoy, kind of making it your own. I think also want to make sure I kind of emphasize the rings here at the bottom of the tower on the left hand side, and the shadows here, the vertical kind of wall slats. And I know I kind of lost the plot on these ones a little bit as I kind of added more of them and more of them. But again, it's about the overall feel of the city and the place we're drawing, not exactly all those fine details, making sure that the major shapes, the major details are correct, and then kind of having fun with the rest of this little sketch. One element that could be fun to add is a little background. We know that behind here are some lovely tall mountains and maybe Skyrim. And some trees here as well. So I'm adding two lines, one, the mountain line, and then two, a little line of trees that kind of stretches up across the page. I'm going to shade in these trees as well to kind of make the Imperial City stand out a little bit more. Making sure that I'm very careful about leaving the white space of the city untouched so it can really contrast the line of trees behind it. Let's add some little faint little lines here down on this far background. And then why don't we do some shading here on the hills in front of the city as well to kind of really make that the whiter walls kind of stand out here. This might also help us kind of make the lake and the rivers in front of us stand out as well. And then what we can really do is have some fun with how you perceive this sketch and how you perceive the castle itself. Where do you want to add more shadow? Where do you want to add more detail? What parts do you think you want to retry or go back over again? Make this drawing your own. I'm going to go back over and add a few more kind of details to the walls here. Adding some structure and some kind of protrusion to the bottom of the walls. They kind of go out on the sides here. Also want to add some more shading and some more vegetation as well. I think as well it can be fun to darken in some of these shadows a little bit too. I bet this is making my phone shake, so I apologize about the camera quality here. But why don't we add some darker shadows on the right-hand side of the wall before we call it quits? To really give the impression of a strong sunlight kind of casting its glow here on the city. Now this top of the tower is a little bit rough, but hey, we are looking for a fun sketch, not a perfect sketch. finish off with a little bit of foreground here. So just a little bit of a tree outline. There you have it. We have a really simple sketch here that's not perfect, not super detailed, but I think it's an effective way to tell the story of the Imperial City and also kind of get our minds and our hands moving across the page. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you also continue sketching. Maybe even sketch this city again with more detail or time, or even in pen or color. If you do, I'd love to hear about it. If you are into these lessons, feel free to subscribe. Check me out on Skillshare. I'd love to continue drawing with you. Thanks for watching.